a letter the Rebbe sent to all the Jewish people from the 18th of Elul, 1975. Go right to it.
Sorry, what was the date? Is that Chayel?
Chayel Tav Shalom Hey. Baruch Hashem Chayel, Brooklyn, New York, to the sons and daughters of Israel, which are in every single place, wherever they are. God bless you all. Greetings and blessings. In preparation for Rosh Hashanah, which is coming upon us and upon all the Jewish people, for good and for blessing. Rosh Hashanah is the head of the year, as opposed to other terms that are used to describe Rosh Hashanah. That points out we don't call it New Year, we call it the head of the year. Why do we call it the head of the year? We call it the head of the year because it gives direction and instruction and conducts a person's life in all the days of the year. In other words, what happens Rosh Hashanah will inform your behavior for the rest of the year, will affect your behavior the rest of the year. What happens that day has great potency vis-a-vis whatever happens the rest of the year, just like the head of your body has a great impact and directs and governs whatever happens in the rest of the year. In other occasions, the Rebbe spoke about how there are three reasons why it's called the head of the year. One is because just like the head is a source of the energy of the body, and the head is the highest part of the body, and the head governs whatever happens in the rest of the body, so too Rosh Hashanah, it is the highest day of the year. As Adam said as we say in our prayers, this is the day of the beginning of your works. We say this is the day. Chassidus explains that the word this means revelation. You can point at something and say, this is it. That means it's a very vivid revelation. So Rosh Hashanah is the highest day of the year. That's why it's called the head of the year, the highest day of the year. It's also called the head of the year because it's the source of the energy of the year. Like the head is the source of the energy of the body. And also it governs whatever happens in the rest of the year. It affects our decisions on that day, affect whatever happens on the rest of the year. Therefore, it's another reason why it's called the head of the year as opposed to New Year or any other name. So this is also the day that God made man, the first man, and from this man, from Adam, all Adam Rishon, all people come from him. In the note over here, that points out that the connection we have with Adam is to such an extent that every single person looks at every person has a similarity to Adam. How so? Just like Adam was created alone, so too every Jew should look at themselves as if the world was created just for them. So to your point, David, about being lonely. Every Jew is meant to think about themselves that they are lonely in the sense that the whole world is created for them. Also, the Rizal says...
It's in a simchadic way.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
In a positive way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The whole world's here for you. The Rizal says that Adam's soul was like a mother's soul, which included in many other souls. And there are some souls, the Jewish people, which are a relationship to Adam's head, some to other parts. So all souls come from Adam, from different parts of Adam. Adam, just like the makeup of the body is different parts, so too the makeup of the soul is different parts. There's a part of the soul which is head, heart, and
Adam wasn't Jewish.
That's a good question. One explanation of that is that the definition of being Jewish is that your soul is so connected to you that your offspring is also related to you, in the sense of Avram and Sarah, their marriage produced Jewish children. Adam had a soul, a godly soul, one of the great. His soul contains all their souls, but the soul wasn't connected to him in a way that one of his offspring would also have that connection. So anyway, so every Jew has from inside of them something of the soul of Adam, and that's why we're all a Jew is called Adam. The Talmud says Jews are called Adam. Why are we called Adam? Because we have in us something of Adam. In the trial of Mendel Bayless, Jackie Mason's Zayda actually was a lawyer, not a lawyer. He was the lawyers of the blood libel against Mendel Bayless consulted with different rabbis about the case. It was a blood libel only 100 years ago, and it was the whole world was talking about it, and they wanted to prove from the Torah. The lawyers want to prove from the Torah that the Torah doesn't subscribe to killing Christian children for the sake of baking matzah. So
or anything else.
So one of the things that the Moshe Maza, Yaakov Moshe Maza, that was his name, he gave to the lawyer on the defense was the following idea. The lawyer, the prosecution, pointed out that in the Talmud it says this word, the Jewish people are called Adam. So he is saying, oh, so that means you're allowed to kill anyone who's not an Adam. We're people, anyone else not a people. Just like you kill cattle to eat cattle, you can kill people. So he said to them the following. Very good thing he said. He says, when some French is accused of murder, are all French people accused of murder? One French guy is accused of murder, but not everyone else is. If one American is accused of murder, every American accused of murder. But here he says, Jewish people are like one body, like one organism, like one man. Mendel Bales is on the stand. Every single Jew in the world is on the stand. Every single Jew is being accused of murder. Anyway, so Baruch Hashem, he was successful. Rabbi Shab also instructed the lawyer to conclude his presentation with the recital of Shema, if I remember correctly. So getting back to our subject over here. So Adam is the first man, and all men come from Adam. So we need to seriously and really strongly delve into the lessons of Rosh Hashanah as they are explicitly written about or hinted to in the Torah, which that is what Torah is about. The word Torah comes from the word lesson. It's called the Torah of life. It has lessons in our daily life of every Jew, man and woman. And the lessons are both from Rosh Hashanah in general, all Rosh Hashanahs, and also a lesson from the specific way Rosh Hashanah falls out, the day of the week, what kind of year it is. So there's lessons to be learned from all those things. So even though every Rosh Hashanah brings new instructions. So we're going to focus on one of the instructions of Rosh Hashanah, which is given to us by our sages. Sages say the following. God made Adam on Friday, on the last day of creation. Why? So he gives a parable to explain this. There's a king who built a palace, and he made the palace with all of the luxuries of the palace, and he prepared a meal, and then he brought the guests. So too, God built the whole world with wisdom, and he built all the needs of the world, all that the world needs, and then he brought the guests. Who are the guests? The guests are Adam and Eve. So on the one hand, the Medrash is emphasizing that what are we doing here? We are the invited guests. God made the whole world for us, right? On the other hand, the Torah says, man was created to work. Each person has to say, says the Talmud, I was created to serve my master. So we need to understand, how can these two diametrically opposed perspectives about man's creation come together? Either we are called God's important guest, which comes when everything is ready and prepared, and at the same time we're called God's servant, as to who has to always serve God and to work hard. Who are we? Are we the guest or are we the slaves? The Rebbe points out in a note that the reason why the Talmud needs to explain why man was created last was because God, as we just learned this week, God thought about the Jewish people before everything. So therefore the question is, so then if the souls of Israel are the very first thing that arose in God's thought even before the Torah, therefore the question is, why is he last? The Vika Rabbah, it says, Ochar v'kem sartani. God created man last and first. The last day was created and the first day was created, meaning we arose in God's thoughts first, but actually we were created last. So therefore the question is, if we are the whole point, why we created last? And that's when the Medrash answers, we're God's important guest. He wants to create everything first so that we should find everything ready. So his question is, one second, are we God's invited guest or are we his servant? And how do these two ideas go together? This is especially relevant. This letter that was 1975 when Shoshana fell on Shabbos, which Shabbos emphasizes. The day of Shabbos is a day when you're supposed to be conscious of how everything is ready. The meal is ready, and you have nothing to worry about. Everything's done for you. So the question is even greater, coming from perspective of Shabbos. How does that fit with this idea that man was created to work and to serve his master? Are we the servants or are we the guests? And one of the explanations of this is as follows. It's specifically the composition of both components that gives us a very deep instruction in life, in something which is a far-reaching instruction that affects our daily life. And it expresses itself in a few points. Point number one, God expects from Adam and Eve, and this is instruction for every Jew as well, man and woman, that even when they are in a circumstance that's similar to a kingly palace, which is not only a place which has all of its necessities, but it has all of the luxuries as well. And they're invited as important guests. They have to make that itself, that circumstance, that luxury that God has given them, they have to make that also a service of God, the creator of the whole world. So even when the person is in a situation of palace, he has everything he needs, and he has all his luxuries as well. He has to know that he has to turn that into a service of God. In the highest level of luxury, in a spiritual level, is something that the Torah tells us about Moshe Levin. It says in the Torah about Moshe Rabbeinu that there's never been a prophet like Moshe Rabbeinu, never will be a prophet like Moshe Rabbeinu, who knew God face to face. And when did Moshe reach his highest perfection? His highest perfection when he reached the 50th gate of understanding. Elsewhere, chassidus points out that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away in a mountain called Nevo. The word Nevo has 3 letters, Nun, Bais, Vav. Nun, Bais, Vav stands for Nun Boy. It has the Nun, it has a 50th in it. Moshe Rabbeinu could only get the 49th gate of understanding in his lifetime, but in the last day of his life, he reached the 50th gate of understanding. So even then, who was Moshe Rabbeinu? On the day when he achieves perfection, the 50th gate of understanding, he is the one who knows God face to face. How does the Torah describe Moshe Rabbeinu on that day? He is Moshe, the servant of God. He is, in his whole being, his whole circumstance, his whole definition, is a servant of God. So he has the greatest luxury spiritually. He's given the best things that there are, that the could possibly get in the world. He's getting the 50th gate of understanding. And who is he? He is a servant of God. Also, on the other extreme, as explained in many places, many times, the service of God does not only apply when you pray and when you learn Torah or do mitzvahs, but also in the language of Maimonides, when you eat, and when you drink, and when you do business, even when you sleep. Because how can you serve God when you sleep? Because a Jew has to prepare to go to sleep. So the sleeping itself is a service of God. Which this is one of the main explanations and deeper meanings of saying Shema before going to sleep. It's that's about setting the stage for your sleep to be the way it's meant to be.
Thank you for that sleep prep talk. I'll use that in my practice. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. Elsewhere, the previous Rebbe points out that by being kind to people during the day, that helps that our dreams should be sweeter. And in general, elsewhere, many letters the Rebbe speaks to people who talk about different kinds of dreams and what they should do about it. The Rebbe generally says to check the mezuzah's film, if you could say generally. And there are many instances there were people that check the mezuzah's film because of their bad dreams, and many other instances there were told people to read books of stories of tzaddikim
Before they go to sleep.
Before they go to sleep, the Rebbe said to learn, for example, the book of memoirs before going to sleep.
Coming.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Read Atam never said to say read Atam before sleep. Okay. So reading the stories of tzaddikim in general and saying Shema, but here the Rebbe says something else. Here the Rebbe saying the service of Hashem includes your sleep, and that's the meaning of saying Shema before going to sleep. That's it says in the Gemara that when you go to sleep, the Zohar says your soul goes to heaven to get more energy. So when does it actually get to more energy? It depends how you go to sleep. The previous Rebbe says that one of the last things we say in our prayers before going to sleep are the words, "In your hand I entrust my spirit." B'yod chav keruchi. So the previous Rebbe said those words, "B'yod chav keruchi," are an acronym for the word well. The way to receive a well of energy for the next day is by giving yourself over to Hashem when you say those words, "B'yod chav keruchi." That devotion you have when going to sleep, that is what gives you the energy for the next day.
B'yod chav keruchi
Stands for be'er.
Be'er,
a well of energy.
Be'er, okay.
Famous teaching of Meir Premishlan. Meir Premishlan points out that in general, when the Ramah disagrees with the code of Jewish law, so he puts something down on and he notes it in his mappa, in his work on the code of Jewish law. And in the code of Jewish law, in the beginning, he talks about how as soon as you wake up in the morning, you have to feel that God is looking at you. You have to feel the truth. So the Ramah says over there, you should also, when you go to sleep, be aware that God's looking at you. So the Meir Premishlan says, why is he mentioning this now in the beginning of the laws of waking up? Why doesn't he talk about this about the laws of going to sleep? And he answers, in order to wake up like a lion, you can't go to sleep like a horse. You have to go to sleep with Yod Chakeruchi, devoting yourself to God, and that's how you make your sleep a service of God. It says in Tanya that a person should be conscious of all the things, all the times they had dreams and they weren't. And when Alter speaks in chapter 29 about making an accounting of where you are in service of Hashem, and he points out different things that maybe people on a higher level they don't see their shortcomings as much. And the Alter says different things that they could also think about to realize that they have, and their behavior leaves much to be desired. One of the things Alter mentions is, does your soul go to heaven and learn Torah when you go to sleep? Are you really experiencing that? And
it doesn't need to be accounting, it needs to be a balance. It's not one of those, let me look at all the bad things that I did. I think that Friedrich Rebbe writes it.
That's, yeah, so the Alter
is an accounting.
Right, so before going to sleep, you're supposed to make a cheshbon nefesh, supposed to make an account. And it's not to make you feel like a doormat, God forbid. It's only in order to know.
People think that's what accounting is to see of all the bad things that you go to sleep feeling like a...
No. For what purpose is to make tomorrow better. How can I make tomorrow better? That's the trajectory of it. And that causes the sleep itself to be a different kind of sleep. That's what I was saying here. So I'm just pointing out that the kind of sleep you have to do with the Shema. That's before going to sleep. It's something which is given to our hands in large measure. Okay, second point, which is also has to be expressed in daily life. Then this is the following: God gave Adam and Eve, and through them to all Jews, men, women, to all generations, the power and the ability to serve God and to add to this kingly palace. Although this is a palace that God made with His wisdom, and so no matter how good the world is around you, you can and you must, every person must bring the world around them to a greater and higher level of perfection. As the Torah says, this wonderful, wondrous expression, how a person's addition to creation causes man to become a partner with God in creation. That a Jew can and does so much that God calls the Torah, which is Torah of truth, says you are a partner with God in creation. So the second point is that we have to realize that God gives us opportunity to add to creation, and so much so that we're called a partner with God in creation. Elsewhere, the Rebbe points out that Hashem could have created us in a way that we don't have this need to achieve. Hashem created us in a way that we always want to accomplish. The Talmud says you would rather have 9 measures Right? So you'd rather have one thing of wheat that you planted yourself than 9 measures you received from someone else. You want to accomplish yourself. Man does not like shameful bread. But the Rebbe asked, how come God created us with this need to achieve? Why couldn't God create us in a way that we don't have a need to achieve? What's the point of creating us with this need that we feel we need to achieve? And the answer that the Rebbe gives is that the greatest gift that can be given to a person is to be a partner with God, to be one with God in creation. And therefore God creates us with a need that we want to accomplish and innovate ourselves so that we can become partners with God in creation. Okay, so those are the first 2 points. Again, point number 1 is that we have to serve God, even if we are in a luxurious circumstances. God it creates those circumstances also as part of the service of God. Whatever luxury God gives us is meant to also be whatever God gives us is meant to be for the sake of serving God. And whatever we're doing is meant to be part of the service of God, even in our sleep. The second point is that man is given the ability to become a partner with God in creation to make a difference. We can and we must make a difference. Point number 3. These 2 aforementioned points make it easier for every single man and woman to do all that they need to do to go higher and higher in all areas which are connected to Torah and mitzvahs and Judaism in general. In the full in sync with man's task in life, I was created to serve my master. Thinking about the wondrous power that God gave him to become a partner, and not in a small thing or in one thing, but in the whole creation, with the creation that was made with God's wisdom. So thinking about how God gave us these wondrous powers, this makes it a lot easier to strive to go higher and higher in all areas of the service of God. Point number 4. This service of God is not something that can be reached in the full measure through a limited or a inconsistent service by special occasions or special opportunities. Rather, through a path in life which is expressed in a daily service of God, so that every action, every word, and every thought should be for the sake of God. So that every action, word, and thought is done in a way that, in the language of King Solomon, in all your ways you should know him. So that he should seek godliness in all areas of his life and also in the needs he has in the world. As Sarah said earlier, even his eating and his drinking, that means in his daily life. It's not, so the service of God is not just something that we do on special occasions, is point number 4. It's not something that has to do with special opportunities. Rather, it's something that's meant to be done all the time. Every thought, every word, and every action has to be connected to seek godliness in everything and serve God with everything. Point number 5. Service of God, l'shamish koini, is something that contains an ingredient. God tells us about the service of God. Serve God with joy. Serve God with joy and with pleasure, with farbrengen. The previous Rebbe told my grandfather, whatever you do with farbrengen, with pleasure. And what's the pleasure? What's the joy? The pleasure and joy is that you can serve God. So 5th point is the service of God. You're serving God. So Torah says when you're serving God, it's to be with joy and pleasure. And this is especially connected to Rosh Hashanah. The Rebbe is giving this letter for 1975. Rosh Hashanah fell out on Shabbos. Was Shabbos' day of pleasure. So, but of course, it's also a message for us every year as well. The Hashem should bless and give success to every single man and woman to do all the above in a way of joy and pleasure. And God should take away everything that can, God forbid, disturb. And through this, to cause salvation, b'kerev ha'aretz, in the midst of the earth, in a way that's open and clear that we could see. And the main thing is to give every Jew and all Jews a good and sweet year in all details and all areas. That's the end of the letter. In the notes over here, the the Rebbe points out the meaning of the words good and sweet ear. The meaning of good and sweet it refers to some things which are good, and there are some things which weren't good, but God sweetened them and made them good. Like there are some things we say about them, this is also good. God zula toiva, like the famous sage said about terrible calamities that happened to him, this is also good. So the idea of masuka, a good and sweet ear, means that it's also a blessing that those things which aren't good should be transformed to good. It's also connected to the custom of eating honey with apple and honey and chal and honey. We want the meaning of this is not just to have a blessing for those things in our life which aren't the way we want them to be transformed to be sweet, but is also connected to our own service of God, as it says in chapter 27 in Tanya, that there are two kinds of delicacies. There are delicacies which are naturally pleasurable and sweet and enjoyable, and there are some foods which aren't delicacies naturally, but they can be seasoned in a way that they become a delicacy. And so too, God made some people to be tzaddikim. They're perfect and they're holy and they're noble, and some people have to fight with their inner demons. And that is a unique delicacy Hashem has from their service when they push away their inclination to do the wrong thing and instead serve God. That's something that causes unique pleasures of God. So let's just go over briefly the 5 points again that we learn from this composition of, on the one hand, we are called God's guests in His palace. On the other hand, we're called God's servants. Number one, whatever circumstances you're in, even if you're in a kingly palace, that's also part of the service of God. Whatever you're doing is part of the service of God. That's number one. Even Moses, who was given the greatest gifts, he's also called God's servant. Second point is that God gives us opportunity to be a partner with Him in creation, to add to this amazing creation that He made with His wisdom, and not just to add to something in the creation, but to be called a partner with God in the whole creation. That's something God empowers us to do. And this brings us to point number 3, that we have these wondrous capabilities, and therefore we should strive to go higher, knowing how much we have inside of us with God empowering us. Point number 4, service of God is not just at some times of the day or year or when you have special opportunities. Rather, service of God is at all times, when everything that you have, all your thoughts, words, and actions. And point number 5, if you're serving God, God says about His service has to be done with joy. All right, stop here. Sei gesund. Great day.